So one of our lovely viewers left a comment asking about how to learn English. By the way, if I read this comment in Korean, how much do you think you'd understand that?
It's impossible for me to say. It depends how technical the question is.
Do you want me to read in Korean first?
That's okay. Let's go English time.
Okay. Let me turn that into English. People usually say to get better at English or to seek better fluency, we have to memorize conversations or know sentences by heart. To the point where, so I kind of translate word by word, okay? To the point where we could say them even in our sleep. So we need repetition. And then we better practice speaking with native speakers through either face chat or face-to-face interaction. Is it true? One question I want to ask you before answering this question is, which pronoun do I have to use when I don't know the gender of a person in this case? So I don't know which gender this viewers has, male or female. Which pronoun should I use?
You can use they.
They
would be okay.
Really?
Yeah,
But not he or she's just the one person.
Sure, but like we use like kind of empty pronoun. They. Oh, they left a comment. I have a viewer who wrote a comment. Their comment said this. They want to know about blah blah blah. They is okay as an empty pronoun.
Okay,
For
very
one
clear.
person.
And before hearing your answer, I used to say he or she.
He or she is fine. You can absolutely say that. Yeah.
Okay. Going back to the question that they asked, it feels like what this viewer asked can be broken down into two sub-questions.
Okay.
Number one is learning English by heart, basically memorizing English by repetition really necessary? So how big role does it play in learning English? I think that's the first sub-question. And the second question might be, is it effective to talk with native speakers, just like we are doing? So I want to know what's your thoughts on these questions.
It's a really complicated question, isn't it?
Yeah. Or probably I can go first. I brought down some ideas here.
Hit me. If you'd like to go first, you can.
Okay. Let's see. Where should I start? So in my opinion, basically every single word they left comment about is completely true. So although some people disagree with the idea of repetition because it seems boring, it seems literally repetitive, but I believe there's no way for us to speak certain sentences fluently without repetition. I told you before coming to this class, I practice by myself, repeating after what movie characters say. And one of the reasons I do that is because number one, I just want to feel prepared. And number two, by repeating certain sentences, especially sentences that I think I'm going to speak in the near future, I repeat them 5 times, 6 times. And then I feel like it almost feels like my second nature to speak at least those sentences. So there is no way to speak every sentence all at once immediately, but at least I can speak certain sentences that I practice in quite short time. So for example, one of the sentences that I can remember right now is there's gotta be another way. There's gotta be another, because I repeat this sentence quite a lot because I think it's very helpful and useful, especially when we discuss. I totally agree with the repetition, even though it feels very boring. So that's my basic idea of repetition. But of course, I have to hear from your side.
Okay. I kind of agree with what you're saying. There is a difference between memorizing and acquisition. Okay, so this is my understanding of the literature on this topic.
Okay.
You know, I'm not an expert as such, but I am interested in this debate.
Okay.
Language is not math. And you can memorize math formulas and use them effectively, but language is not the same thing. And so you kind of can't brute force through memorization language into your head, right? But I do think through repetition, you acquire language, and memorizing can help speed up the process, but you can't force words that you're trying to acquire. It's a subconscious process. A lot of language users use like flashcard applications to study words, but the purpose of that is to recognize the words in the wild when you're doing your immersion. So when you're watching TV shows and things, you recognize this word that you're trying to, you kind of try to memorize the meaning of the word, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to use the word. These are different processes.
True. Okay, let me make it a little bit more specific and detailed. So what I mean by memorization is basically repetition. And more specifically, repetition means speaking certain sentence out loud. If I have to show you the way I practice by repetition is, for example, there's gotta be way. There's gotta be way. There's gotta be way. There's gotta be way. You mentioned that the language kind of works at subconscious level. So the way I say it, to reach that subconscious level, repetition is kind of essential. Because no matter how many, let's say, content you see to acquire that language, unless we repeat by speaking that out loud, then it's hard to reach that subconscious level. Memorization and repetition feels quite different because flashcards, I don't have to necessarily speak the words in the flashcards out.
Sure.
In that sense, repetition a little bit different. So could you add some more opinion if you have?
So, okay, I think it can be valuable, that exercise. You're building muscle memory and things like that.
Muscle memory.
Right.
I love that word, muscle memory.
Muscle memory.
Yeah?
So you're helping your mouth, like, to form the words, and it might like come easier when it's time to say it. But if you're not doing the immersion as well as this activity, there's something that's called, can't remember the official term for it, but it's like situational recall or situational memory.
I got the picture.
When you're sitting down and you're looking at your list of words, your list of sentences that you've been practicing, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
But in a different situation, you can't for some reason, right? If I gave you a list of 10 words to memorize in a swimming pool underwater and out of a swimming pool, when I put you back in the swimming pool, you're more likely to remember those 10 words than in a
That's a very interesting experiment.
Yeah, and these are the kind of things that I remember from studying in psychology about how memory works, but it's very complicated.
So basically what you said is, although I repeat certain sentence a couple times, if I don't have so-called immersion, a lot of contents basically, then I might not be able to recall what I practice when I really need to speak those sentences.
Yeah, it's hard to articulate, but as far as I've read, they're slightly different processes. But that doesn't mean that it's not valuable. I think it is valuable and it can help as long as you're also doing the other things. And you can't control when that target phrase will be activated or acquired, right? Which is why a lot of students struggle with this. I'm working really hard, but my progress doesn't match my effort.
Definitely.
But suddenly you'll have this, breakthrough moment where you realize like, wow, a couple of months ago, I wasn't speaking like this and it's working now.
You use the word muscle memory. I love that phrase.
Muscle memory.
Do you, how do I say, is muscle memory the word you just create, or is kind of professional like terms for linguistics or something? Just out of curiosity.
No. It's a well-known kind of phenomenon, and it's to do with like motor tasks. So
Motor
physically
tasks.
moving.
Okay.
Through repetition. So someone who, has proper form at the gym, once through repetition, when they have proper form and they learn it, you're more likely to continue doing it in the correct way, right? Because your muscles learn the movement. Not
with your brain.
Right, it becomes automatic almost. Yeah. And so it's not, of course, memory muscle doesn't have the ability to have memory, but we call it muscle memory.
Muscle memory. Okay, let's see what other points that we need to touch upon here. Have you ever tried to get your students to repeat after what you say, to kind of force them to speak more, to get certain phrases to be familiar to them?
I haven't done that especially, but when I was teaching kids, a lot of it was like that. But with adults, it's much more like I model an answer and then they use the model to cut and customize it to themselves, right? So I'm talking real beginner, someone who comes to me the first time. Instead of me just saying, oh, like, how old are you? Like, what's your job? And not giving them any way of any kind of any structure to talk back, they might shut down because they don't know how to say anything. But if I say, oh, you know, I'm an English teacher, what's your job? They're much more likely to be able to reply, I'm a, and then customize it to themselves. So I'm a blah, blah, blah. So it's like modeling the answer more than direct repetition, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, totally makes sense. And it's also totally random question. But have you ever given some of your students assignments or homeworks they have to do before coming to class to model answering? If they write before coming to class, the interactions between you and your students would be going much more smoothly.
I agree, and yes, I do. I encourage my students to prepare beforehand, but every student is different. And so if I'm doing free talking with the students and I have a list of topics that they can choose from, some students want to choose in advance, and in which case I recommend that they prepare for the conversation. But some students want the challenge of spontaneity, right? And so they
spontaneity.
They want
spontaneously. It's the same family word.
Exactly right. They want to be spontaneous.
Be spontaneous.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They want to choose spontaneously.
And by the way, the reason I kind of sometimes interrupt you when I don't really get the meaning, or in case I
That's great.
kind of misunderstand you, is because when I edit a video, sometimes I struggle to figure out what Ben said in this part.
Sure.
So just prevent that problem from happening again. Spontaneous.
Right.
And then, you know, one of the good things that I also learn, kind of, I want to call it double learning. So I basically learn from you right now. And then when I edit a video, I'm kind of forced to review your class, you know, repeat certain scenes to figure out what you say. And then I make sure to kind of record into the Excel file the certain phrases that I find useful. Of course, spontaneity.
Yep.
I'm gonna put that phrase into my Excel file as well. One word that I remember right now is switch off. I like that word very much. Switch off. One of your students also commented he or she loved the review material that you sent right after you wrap it up.
I'm so curious who the student is that's commenting. So
do you want me to ask them?
I would like to know, but so far no one has admitted that it was.
Wait for a second. So let's move on to the next sub question.